Support for this podcast comes from Progressive, America's #1 boat insurer. We've all made mistakes on the water, but there's one mistake you shouldn't make: being uninsured. With Progressive Boat Insurance, you can choose coverage for most mistakes you or other boaters could make, helping you float carefree all season long. Quote today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. #1 rating based on boat market share data from ratefilings.com.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are the things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we reopen our mailbag to take questions from our listeners. A lot of off-season focused questions coming in, even though we're not technically in the off-season just yet, but there are some prospect questions and more Birdland related topics in this week's mailbag. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. Basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, to political props. Head to the website today. Get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And on tonight's episode, we will take questions from our listeners. I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in with this question from The Bird is the Word from Discord. And by the way, all of our questions tonight, at least so far, come from our Discord channel. The Bird is the Word wants to know what your, quote, dream off-season would look like. And on the flip side of that, what's a realistic offseason look like? And with that, I will start with Nick.
Let me get maybe I wasn't ready when I said I'm ready to start. All right, here we go. It's dream offseason. More just, I haven't fully dove into this offseason stuff yet because the World Series isn't even over. It's still only October, and there's lots of other sports going on right now. But just generally kind of looking at things. I read Andy Costco's piece this morning. I don't know if you guys read that, or he had a quote from an industry source that basically said Corbin Burns is probably getting $300 million, which I think a lot of us assumed. I don't doubt that at all. So for my dream offseason, I'm going to say that they get priced out of Burns. Someone decides to just break the bank for Corbin Burns. Have at it. Orioles get the draft pick. Instead, we're going to trade for Luis Castillo. Let's take on that salary. Let's sign Max Fried. Give us a rotation of Fried, Castillo, Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, and Dean Kramer. Mix and match number 5 starter if you want to. Sign Christian Walker. Bring back Anthony Santander. Or take the draft picks from Burns and Santander and sign Teoscar Hernandez. That's my dream offseason. I think realistic offseason, same thing. Why can't we do those things? Honestly, I don't know. I've been hesitant this entire time. I've said it many times on the show. I've been so hesitant about the amount of money we're going to see being spent by this front of this new ownership group. But I don't know. I guess I'm just now buying in more. Maybe it's more so just because we're here on the verge of the offseason, frustrations from how last season ended. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm really buying into that hype, buying into those quotes a little bit more. Now that it's late October, almost November, I think Elias is going to surprise a lot of people. So like I don't see why we couldn't go after one of the big starters like Snell or Fried, trade for a Luis Castillo type arm, and be in on one of the big bets. There aren't very many big bets to go after, so I'm sure prices are going to be insane. But why not go after a Christian Walker type as well? So yeah, I'm going to say my realistic offseason is equivalent to my dream offseason.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm going to take dream and mean it. Pipe dream maybe. Juan Soto, come on down. New right fielder, Gold Glove defense, cannon for an arm. He can hit a little bit too. You bring Santander back, whether it's qualifying offer, probably not. I don't think he's getting 6 or 7 years like I've seen some outlets predict, but maybe you bring him back. Then you use Kjerstad and whoever else to trade for Garrett Crochet, and you sign Max Fried. And maybe in this scenario, Mountcastle and O'Hearn can stay at first base for now. And you just go own the world. I think that would be nice. That would be my dream offseason. My realistic offseason, again, just like Nick, I haven't dove super deep because I think our offseason preview will be next week. I'm planning to do a little more research before then. But basically my realistic would be you sign a Christian Walker type for first base. You sign a Teoscar Hernandez at the high end, or I can't remember the guy that I was mentioning as the backup option or the secondary option, outfielder, first base type. Mark Canha, there it is. Then you sign or trade for a mid-tier arm. I think there's plenty of options. Sean Manaea, you say Kikuchi, or trade for a guy like Luis Castillo. That seems more realistic. But yeah, I do think that anyone's dream offseason could be realistic. Under new ownership, it's just a matter of let's see it in fact rather than just quotes in the media, and if that's what Elias wants to do, because ultimately I think we have a good owner who's going to let the baseball guy do the baseball stuff, which is a good thing, whether it's a metrically sexy offseason or not.
I'll meld your dream off seasons together a little bit. I'll take Juan Soto in right field next year. I will bring Anthony Santander back, so I'll have Soto and Santander in the same lineup. I will trade for Luis Castillo. That would be, for me, the really big ticket items of the offseason, but I'm going to put the other thing out there. I'm extending Gunnar Henderson this offseason too. Get the big move done, out of the way, give him a 12-year extension. Now you've got the next decade plus set with him as your franchise cornerstone. And to round things out, to short the rotation, I'm bringing in Nathan Eovaldi. Success in the American League East, postseason success, checks off so many boxes. Realistically, what's going to happen this offseason, I think that the Orioles are going to be more active in free agency, but I think that someone in the Kikuchi, Eovaldi tier is going to be top contract for them. I could see Teoscar Hernandez as a viable alternative to Santander, and one that I would welcome if the Dodgers don't decide to just outbid everybody to keep him. And maybe you see a kind of under the radar, smaller extension or two, but it won't be Gunnar.
Yeah, the Gunnar extension, I've said it before, if that's all they do, hopefully it's not, but I wouldn't be that upset, because that's he's a superstar that we have at home. Let's keep him at home. I think that's job number one for any capable franchise. So yeah, add that to my dream off season as well.
Go down to the next question now from Kevin Brown. What would you describe as a bad off season for the O's? And I'll start with Bob on this one.
Yeah, since I was supposed to ask that question and I was just letting you do all the work. A bad off season would be, and of course Kevin Brown is the one asking this question, gotta be you. So thanks, Kevin, for the question. It was nice to meet you again at the live show. bad offseason, I'd say don't offer Santander the qualifying offer. A bad offseason to me feels like something that is never going to happen, like these stupid mistakes that a team like the Rockies would make. But all right, even if common sense prevails and they do offer Santander the qualifying offer because it's a no-brainer, I think just not doing anything, not locking up anyone long-term, no extensions. Maybe they bring back Kyle Gibson to shore up their rotation. If they keep making moves like it's 2022, 2021, then maybe it's a bad offseason. But honestly, outside of just literally doing nothing, I just can't imagine how this front office with ownership being this on board can have a quote-unquote bad offseason. And no matter what we do, someone will say it was a bad offseason. So, and probably Kevin Brown will be one of those people. But it would take a lot, I feel like, to be officially a bad offseason.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, signing, like looking through the free agent list earlier, like signing like Andrew Heaney and calling it a day to kind of round
Frazier.
Yeah, to like round out the rotation there, like, and just kind of be like, all right, we're going to rely on these younger players. Like we're going to say Colton Cowser takes the next step forward. We're going to say Jackson Holiday and or Kobe Mayo take that big leap forward next year. The rotation stays healthy. Maybe injury variance swings back into the favor of the Orioles, or at least kind of evens out a little bit compared to the last 2 years. But yeah, I do think it's kind of. I was even almost thinking like maybe this is going back to like my dream offseason scenario. Like, what if it's not Andrew Heaney, but you go up a tier to the tier Zach was talking about, the Yusei Kikuchi or Nathan Eovaldi tier, and like that's the one big free agent signing, and that's it. Like, would that be a failure? It wouldn't be my ideal offseason, but I wouldn't call that like a bad offseason if it's just that. But yeah, I just think there's too much optimism. I don't want to hear more reports all the time like the Orioles were in on this guy. They made the competitive offer. Like, I get it's a two-way street. You can offer the money, and some guys, it's of course money is the primary motivation there, but there are a lot of other factors at play here, and I get that. It's not as easy as just throwing money at problems all the time. But like, I want to see the Orioles be extremely aggressive, even on some of these mid-tier guys. Like, if you have to overpay a couple $1 million, overpay the couple $1 million this year. Like, don't be afraid to give an extra $10 million or so to one of these mid-tier pitching guys. That's all I want to see. It's they have the capabilities to make some massive swings again this offseason, which I think they will make at least one. But just don't be content with what this roster is right now, because it's great, it's young, it's promising, but like it needs some infusion of something. And hopefully this front office knows better than me as to what that infusion is, and hopefully they're aggressive in going to get it.
It's a great point about what I was going to say about the new ownership is, yeah, we have the money. If we want a guy, there should be no reason that we can't get that guy, unless it's like a bidding war with the Dodgers or the Yankees, or, I mean, in very small chance circumstance. But if they want to go get Sean Manaea, there should be nothing stopping them from getting Sean Manaea here. I mean, you have a billionaire ownership, and I know Mike Elias and company don't want to overpay for value, but when you have the means to do it, you might as well do it.
I'll say a bad offseason for me, just going through some possible things that could happen on the extreme worst case scenario, but won't. One of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit is club options on some key players. If all three of those club options, Ryan O'Hearn, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Danny Coulombe, were declined, and all three of those players left, or two of those three players left, I would consider that a massive failure. On top of that, if you want to make the offseason really bad, don't do anything to the lineup and make the only starting pitching move be a move for a pitcher that you have to bring back from injury and or ineffective stuff. So if, in other words, the only starter the Orioles bring in this offseason is someone like Shane Bieber, where you have to hope that somehow you can fix him, I'm not going to be real happy with that, because they already have to try to fix Trevor Rogers. They've already got some in-house projects. There's no need to go out and bring another one in if you're not going to do anything to improve the top of the rotation. If you improve the top of the rotation, solidify the middle, and go for someone that maybe you catch lightning for a bottle, I have no problems with that. But if the lightning in the bottle move is the only move this offseason for the pitching staff, I would consider that a really bad offseason.
Yeah, I like the Bieber thing. I'd be on board with that. But yeah, don't make that be like the one thing and be like, all right, if he hits, we really nailed this offseason. Like a lot has to go right. And he's coming off, Tommy John surgery, or bringing in, a lower tier pitcher. I'm trying to go through this list real quick. I don't even know, like whoever, one of the lower tier arms, and then like a Walker Buehler, like the high upside, again, we got to fix them. You can sign those fixer upper types, but you can bring in another project or two to stash down in AAA. But like after you've brought in the ace of your staff and you've brought in another like mid rotation veteran starter who's been around the block and can really solidify this rotation, because look, if Cade Povich has to start the year in AAA, so be it. Like I hope he has to start the year back in AAA, because they've addressed this pitching staff. You can never have too many arms, as we saw last year. But we've got
Dodgers.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've got so much good depth. If you can start the year with Brandon Young, Chase McDermott, I think maybe find a home in the bullpen to start the year. But Chase McDermott, Brandon Young, Cade Povich starting out as Norfolk's AAA rotation, like that's a dream scenario as well.
Yeah, and if I could just expound, the Corbin Burns trade, fantastic. But we saw, because as Andy, past co-host of the show, Andy Koska, said, he's probably going to get $300 million. So it was most likely a one-and-done scenario. It was awesome, but that's a lot of pressure. So if you're going to trade for your ace of the staff for next year, have it be a guy like Sonny Gray or Luis Castillo or Garrett Crochet, who is under control for at least 2 seasons. Cost might be more, but at least you have extended that timeline of having that guy.
So talking about pitchers and signing free agents, Birdfan23 asks, is it fair to assume that when it comes to pitchers, the Orioles will target those options that are projected for only 1 or 3 year deals, unless it's a Corbin Burns / Max Fried, those being the only guys they're willing to go 5 or 6 years for? So do we think the Orioles are only going to be targeting guys on short-term deals?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I don't think that is going to change as far as just the philosophy of the front office. Like, it's not smart to sign free agent pitchers because they're usually older and more injury prone to super long deals, because it almost never works out. As you can see, even Luis Castillo, who has yet to really falter, his trade value on Baseball Trade Values, the best and most accurate website on the internet, is -30. So that contract is dinging his trade value, apparently. So, yeah, I could see where in the past there have been reports where the Orioles were only willing to go 2 years on a guy like Jameson Taillon. Maybe that is they're willing to go to 3 now with new ownership and less restrictions. So it should be more competitive when it comes to these 1 to 3 year type of guys, like we talked about before. But I don't think the philosophy of not going beyond 3 years for a starting pitcher who's not a legitimate ace is going to change. And yeah, maybe Max Fried, you would go 6 seasons. I'm sure they would go 6 seasons for Burns, but someone's probably going to go 10. So yeah, I think that's pretty much accurate.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think that kind of is the starting rotation class this year. It's a lot of guys who are probably going to command 1 to 3 year deals. If someone wants to be really aggressive on Blake Snell, they could possibly push it to 5 or 6. Fried, I think, falls somewhere in that range on the top end, and then you have Burns. Who knows what Burns is going to get? It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 8. I don't know, but I know regardless that if there's one pitcher this offseason who's getting a long-term deal that pays him a lot of money, it's going to be Burns. And just putting this out there, because we're already hearing rumblings about how TV deals could affect spending again this winter. That's been brought up nationally by people who are frankly a lot more qualified to talk about that subject than I am. There's always one pitcher every offseason that gets screwed over by that. And I hope for his sake it's not Max Fried. But if that trend does carry into this offseason, there's going to be a pitcher or two who signs late in the winter for a lot less in terms of years than what people are expecting. So I wouldn't assume automatically that someone other than Corbin Burns is in that 5 to 6 year tier.
It might be Blake Snell again, to be honest with you. And if it is, I'm all over that. 1 or 2 year deal, even 3 for Blake Snell. 3 years, $100 million. If his market doesn't, come into view like he wants it, then bring him home. We wanted him at the deadline. If he's there for the right price, why not grab him now?
It's going to be interesting to see, just because you also see a lot of guys. You saw what happened to all the Boris clients last offseason, and everybody's dropping Boris. So, like, what impact is that going to have this offseason? I think throw some short-term deals at these guys and just unload the bank on them. Like, we've got the money, we've got this ownership now. Like, come on, I just want to see the money flowing, and I honestly do think we will, especially with these arms. Though I'm like Blake Snell. Well, that's kind of bleeding into the next question, but you've got some really good options that I think the Orioles will be in on and be aggressive on. But at the same time, I think the big splash is going to come via trade again. It may not be the Burns 1 year deal guy, but I don't know. I feel like they've really hit these trades with pitchers. The Zach Eflin deal, unbelievable deal so far. Corbin Burns trade, I think, was a fantastic deal. Love you, Joey, but that was a fantastic deal. I don't know. I think this team has been pretty good lately at navigating these deals for top flight arms. I'd like to see them try it again this offseason.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it. Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
It took a lifetime to find the person you want to marry. Finding the perfect engagement ring is a lot easier. At BlueNile.com, you can find or design the ring you've always dreamed of with help from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who are on hand 24/7 to answer questions, and the ease and convenience of shopping online. For a limited time, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code POD at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code POD at BlueNile.com.
If the new Chicken Big Mac at McDonald's looks like a Big Mac, has 3 buns and sauce like a Big Mac, but has 2 chicken patties, then it's not a Big Mac.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time.
Yeah, well, let's go to the next question, because I would never forget that it's my turn to say it. As we know, the bird is the word. Would like to know, who would you target in free agency this offseason? So who's like the one guy that you're like, this is who I want the Orioles to get, no matter what? Zach?
It's Eovaldi, just for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. Just the resume that he has, the impact he can make. Is he going to finish in the top 5 for Cy Young voting? No. But if you have him in the rotation to pair with a trade acquisition, Eflin, Rodriguez, Kramer, that's a really, really good rotation going into next year. And that this is a guy that's not going to be afraid of the big moment. He's shown time and time again he's a very good postseason pitcher. And the other thing is he has AL East success. And if the Orioles are going to be in a tight race again with the Yankees or another team in this division, which they will be, that he's not going to fold under the pressure in that situation. So I would give Eovaldi 2-3 year deal bring him in. I think that would do wonders for the rotation. And if Anthony Santander does not come back, Teoscar Hernandez is the first player that I'm going to. Right-handed bat, gives you good power. Even his quote-unquote down year in 2023 with the Mariners was not that bad of a season. And he put up good numbers this year in Dodger Stadium, which is not exactly a hitter's haven. So I don't have that concern that he can't get it over the wall at Camden Yards.
Especially the time in Seattle after this season that they had and all the stuff that's come out about the offensive, especially right-handed hitters in that ballpark. Yeah, it definitely adds a wrinkle.
A lot of good options there. I am, in my scenario here, if we're only going with one here, which I like that premise for the question. If I'm only targeting my one must-have guy, my caveats are that I'm assuming Santander comes back. I'm assuming, again, going back to the trades, it's not just Luis Castillo. It's Framber Valdez. It's Crochet. There are a lot of really good arms that I think teams will, even competing teams, are going to be willing to deal this offseason. And the Orioles, we know, have the firepower. And you're going to get, hopefully, you're going to get at least one comp pick, ideally two, hopefully not three, because that would involve Santander leaving, but keep Santander, you're going to get 2 draft picks. Like, I'm not concerned about, trading more of the prospects. So assuming all that's the case, we trade for the arm, Santander's back. My go-to guy, I think it's Christian Walker. I think we're going to talk about Ryan Mountcastle in a later question. Of course, and also excluding Juan Soto, because that's the easy answer, I think, for everything here. Every team's dream scenario is Juan Soto. But I want Christian Walker. I think Ryan Mountcastle, as we're going to talk about soon, I think he's easily replaceable bat as far as being an Oriole is concerned. We'll dive into that caveats later on. But Christian Walker, man, 30 home run guy, good walk numbers, 118, 120, 125 WRC plus consistently the last many years. Bring me that big power right-handed hitting bat in this lineup and bring him back home. Let's have him finish his career where it all started.
That was going to be one of my guys. I was going to cheat and say a hitter and a pitcher, but now I don't have to because Christian Walker was going to be one of them. I agree, just super consistent. And what was I going to say? Oh, also he plays great defense at first base. I think he's continually been one of the best defending first basemen since he got into the league. So, yeah, Christian Walker, totally co-signed that. And for me, on the pitcher side, if the team is planning to keep Cade Povich and not use him in a deal for the next big pitcher that comes in, Max Fried is the perfect, bring him in-house. Bring the guy that everyone thinks Cade Povich reminds him of in-house and let him learn, just like I'm hoping that Bradish and Rodriguez learned from Burns being here this season. Bring in Max Fried and let him just take Povich under his wing. And then hopefully you have 2 of them in a year or 2. And I also have the next question, of course. Billy would like to know, will James McCann be someone's opening day catcher in 2025? Which I guess I could bring up this question from the chat as well. Randy would like to know, do we sign James McCann? I think if we lose Santander, have lost Hayes, we really need him for his play and his veteran presence. Nick?
He's not going to be somebody's starting catcher on opening day in 2025. I hope he's back with the Orioles. I would not be mad at all. We're going to have a question about Basayo as well. Basayo is not going to be on the opening day roster. Basayo is a long ways away as far as catching is concerned. Adley, I'm convinced something, like a lot of people, I think, is convinced he was just not healthy last season. I liked what McCann did. And you look offensively, like the 80, what do you have, an 89 WRC plus? Yeah, 89 WRC plus. So, I mean, when you adjust that for catchers, that was pretty good. He was 29th in the majors among catchers with at least 200 plate appearances. I'll take that. Post All-Star break, James McCann hit 262 with a 785 OPS. That was a 200-point increase in OPS compared to pre-All-Star break James McCann. The guy took a pitch to the face, stayed in the game, so Adley wouldn't have to catch game 2 of the doubleheader. He's clearly a veteran leader in this clubhouse. You can nitpick some of the defensive metrics, and maybe the Orioles could go out and improve upon that, especially considering Adley's weaknesses behind the plate. but I would not be mad at all if McCann is back on this roster. I know it would make my dad very happy. I think he's ready to build a James McCann statue after he took the fastball to the face. But bring him back. I have no issues with that at all. Bring him back on a 1-year deal. Help continue to bridge that gap for, Basayo, Willems, whoever it is, the prospect that really hits and breaks out. Bring him back.
I don't think McCann starts somewhere next year, but I think that he has a job in the league as long as he wants one. And if he does want one, I think the Orioles should look at bringing him back. And honestly, that's kind of what I expect to happen unless they decide that they really want to curtail Adley's playing time. And we're never going to, I agree with what John Mioli wrote in the banner recently. We're never going to know what happened with Adley in the second half this year. So the Orioles probably won't want to concede that they need to reduce his usage. And if that's the case, bring McCann back. You have a role that works for him. And I'm just, I know that there is a lot of discussion around his defense and where it could be better. And I see all of those points. But at the end of the day, is that really what cost the Orioles down the stretch this year? That's just a really, really small thing to nitpick that I think you could drive yourself nuts trying to fix it and end up in the exact same spot. You could bring in Austin Hedges because Austin Hedges is a much better defender than McCann, which he is, but he's also a worse hitter. So how much are you really gaining there? So unless there's a scenario where the backup catcher is going to have to take on a higher workload because Adley is going to play less, then I think McCann is back.
Yeah, I like Austin Hedges because I do think his defense, as long as the challenges, pitch like balls and strikes aren't able to be challenged, I do think he gives an edge when it comes to framing and that kind of stuff. But it is like having a pitcher in your lineup when he's in there. So could definitely see. I would have no problem keeping McCann around. My wife would be happy. I think he's clearly a stable presence in the clubhouse. I think he's well-liked, just super steady guy. I honestly would be surprised if he's not back with the Orioles at this point. But yeah, I think no. Is he starting? Unless there's a, knock on wood, injury for Adley in spring training, no, I don't think he's going to be a starter for anybody.
All right, we talked about those guys with options. So this one's from Connor Newcomb, host of Locked On Orioles, another fantastic Orioles podcast. You have to decline one of these team options. Ryan O'Hearn at $8 million, Sir Anthony Dominguez at $8 million, Danny Coulombe at $4 million. You got to pick one to decline. Who are you declining, Zach?
I thought about this, and I would go with Dominguez just because the volatility factor we saw on display with him, really with the Phillies even before he joined the Orioles this year. The guy has very good stuff, but he also has a tendency to give up the long ball. And given the success that players like Coulombe and like Jacob Webb have had after coming over to the Orioles, I feel like that they would find a way to make up for the production that Dominguez loses. In reality, I don't want the Orioles to decline that option. I want them to pick that up and have him setting up Felix Bautista next year. But if I had to pick one of those options to decline, I would go with Dominguez because I think Coulombe adds a dimension to this bullpen that we didn't realize we absolutely needed until he missed a significant chunk of the year with an injury. And if you can keep O'Hearn to the role that Ryan O'Hearn should have, which is a platoon bat between first base and DH, he's going to give you that $8 million in production.
Yeah, I think all of these options are fair for the players. Well, actually, $4 million for Coulombe was a steal, so that's definitely not the one I'm going to decline. I think he's like secretly like the MVP of the bullpen, other than Felix Bautista when he's healthy. I just think you can put him in any spot, and yeah, he's not going to blow you away, but he's crafty. He knows how to. He's like the Darren O'Day of this era of the Orioles bullpen for me. I'm going to decline Ryan O'Hearn's option, and it's not going to stop me from trading Ryan Mountcastle. Sorry, Ben and company Mountie fans. I just think I think it's fair contract for Ryan O'Hearn, but like we're saying, if we're going to go after a guy like Christian Walker or some other guy that can stand at first base and not have to be platooned, then I think there are better ways you can utilize first base / DH, especially if you want to get Heston Kjerstad some more regular playing time. If you want to get Samuel Basayo up at the end of the year, that's a little bit further down the line. But I think if you want to utilize the DH spot against right-handed pitching, and you don't want to trade Heston Kjerstad, and you want to potentially bring back Santander, then I think I'd rather have those guys as an option more than O'Hearn. Most likely, I think they're going to pick it up no matter what. Even if they want to try to trade Ryan O'Hearn at some point, I think they'll pick it up because it is a very reasonable deal that could be traded if they need to. But for me, it's Ryan O'Hearn, which I love the story. I love the way that he came in on a minor league deal and revamped his career with the Orioles. I'd love to see it continue, but unfortunately, I just think this team is too loaded and potentially loaded when it comes to new acquisitions to warrant it if everything goes according to plan.
Just him taking jabs at the Twitter trolls is worth the $8 million to bring him back. Loved it. Yeah, if I have to pick one, I'm going with O'Hearn as well. Like Dominguez, like Zach said, wasn't always super reliable, but he stepped up when Craig Kimbrell collapsed. Let's say that 3 times fast, or don't, because we don't need to speak his name anymore. But like you're going to have Felix Bautista back next season. Hopefully, it's more comforting the fact that there was like at least the thought of, it wasn't going to happen, but at least the thought of, could Felix Bautista come back at the end of 2024 and pitch in the playoffs, because his timeline of returning from Tommy John surgery lined up fairly well. He's going to be fully healthy, hopefully, this offseason. We've seen the videos over and over that he posts on Instagram. He's been throwing for a while. So if he's fully ready to go for 2025, but he's also still like fresh off Tommy John surgery. So I like just having that option of Dominguez to fall back on, helping Bautista ease in. With Sir Anthony Dominguez not in the 9th inning role, but combining with Coulombe and Webb, I think that's going to be a really effective bullpen. So I'm going to bring him back. Yeah, the $8 million to some might be a little scary for a guy who's up and down and isn't going to be relied upon to be that 9th inning guy anymore. But I'll gladly pay $8 million for Dominguez to come back and see what happens. Coulombe was the easy one to say, yes, you're accepting that one for $40 million. Honestly, he's probably become one of my favorite arms on this staff. I think Zach also said last week the Minnesota Twins were the gift that keeps on giving when we were talking about Juan Rojas. That is true in many different ways, because I thank you for Danny Coulombe. And yeah, Ryan O'Hearn's like, he's been an asset to this organization. I think it was a fantastic pickup. But yeah, if I'm picking one, in real life, I hope they do pick up the $8 million option. And if you need to reconfigure the first base DH role, like Bob was kind of talking about, go for it. You're not talking about big contracts with Mountcastle or O'Hearn. But in this scenario, see you later, O'Hearn. Thank you for everything you did.
We'll stick on the topic of first base with this question from Bobby Jones. What is a realistic return for Mountcastle? We've pied in the sky about Seattle pitcher, but that seems like way too much. Start with Bob here.
It's way too much if you're thinking that Mountcastle alone is going to get you one of the Seattle pitchers, and I'm talking Logan Gilbert, Brian Wu. And like I was saying before we started, the names are slipping out of my top of the mind as I've taken a little bit of a break from baseball. The other pitcher, Bryce Miller, there it is. Yeah, I think you need to do like a Mountcastle plus Kjerstad plus Povich, something like that. But I still think that he could be a cog in a trade of that nature. Or, like I was saying, the trade value of Luis Castillo being in the negatives, and maybe it's not quite as bad as that, but maybe you could do Mountcastle and, I don't know, some other mid to bottom of the top 50 prospect for Luis Castillo, and maybe a reliever or money, or I don't know, whatever they can figure out. Maybe there's something there, but I just continue to see like Mountcastle's trade value, according to baseballtradevalues.com, is 4.3, which is pretty low for a guy that's got 2 years of control left. So yeah, you're not going to get a ton, but I do think he's more useful in trade than he will be to the Orioles in 2025.
Yeah, first base DH. So obviously the value isn't going to be that high, even with the 2 years of control. Like, I don't know. I'm not trading him for some whatever league average reliever or anything like that. I think you can at least put together a package and get something more for him. But I just think, yeah, we always talk about guys that, oh, they're more valuable to the Orioles than they are to other teams because like they're actually not that good, but like we have no other options, so we need them. But with Mountcastle, I think it's the opposite, where I agree with what Bob just said. He's more valuable to other team than the Orioles. That wall truly did break him. Like he completely tried to change his attack this year, and it didn't work. His job is to hit bombs. And he's going to strike out a lot. He's not going to walk enough. He's going to play okay defense, Gold Glove, blah blah blah, whatever. But your job is to hit 30 home runs, and he hasn't done that in a long time. He's gone from 33 home runs to 22 to 18 to 13. I know there's the vertigo and all that, but that's not an excuse when you're looking at 3-4 year sample here. Like he's a league average bat who can't hit home runs in Baltimore. So I don't really see as far as starters go, he's probably the most replaceable starter in this lineup. I'm kind of hoping for his sake he is traded, just because I think a new organization, a fresh start, I think could do wonders for Mountcastle, and he could return to that 25 plus home run guy on another team. My first thought was, I don't have specific names in mind. You guys know I don't come up with these trades, but like Cincinnati, I don't know what are some options maybe the baseball trade value says for Cincinnati, but like there's a lot of pitching over there with the Reds. And I was looking at this. I didn't think it was going to be this extreme, but according to Baseball Savant, Ryan Mountcastle would have hit 25 home runs last year in Cincinnati, nearly double his 2024 total. And that's 5 more than his next best projections, which were at Yankee Stadium and National Stadium. He had projected for 20 on Baseball Savant. So, I mean, Cincinnati is friendly to every hitter, but I don't know. Like the Reds have a fantastic pitching staff, a lot of high risk, high reward guys, but they've also drafted, Rhett Lauder, who reached the major leagues in his first year as a pro, Chase Burns. They're continuing to hammer pitcher in the draft. And you look at some of these other guys, like I'm going to dig deep here. They took 2 guys last year, Luke Holman out of LSU and Tristan Smith out of Clemson last year, 2 guys that I love. If you can work out a deal with Cincinnati and bring in pitching prospects like that back for Mountcastle, best of luck, Mountie, and I hope you hit 30 home runs with the Reds.
Yeah, if just looking at the Reds now, if you're talking about major leaguers, Fernando Cruz could be an option, Graham Ashcroft. Yeah, that's probably the 2 best guys. If you're not going to extend a deal and try to get like a Hunter Green or someone like that. So
we talked about this a little bit at the live show at Checker Spot Brewing a couple of weeks ago, and I said then that I thought that maybe the Orioles swing a better version of the Austin Hayes trade if they deal Mountcastle this offseason. So probably I'm thinking without specific names, and maybe next week when we have the offseason preview, I'll have some names in mind. But I'm thinking reliever with at least a season plus a team option left on his deal that could slot into medium to high leverage situations that maybe is underperforming a little bit based on his stuff. And as a probably exaggerated generalization, a lot of teams have that exact arm in their bullpen right now. And Ryan Mountcastle, for all of his ups and downs, would at least be a high upside alternative to first base for a lot of bad teams going into next year, to anybody that's coming back to those teams. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you trade him to a contender. It could be you trade him to a team that is working through a rebuild, that wants to try to catch lightning in the bottle and build his trade value back up, or that wants to flip him. Or it could be like Bob said, that he's a piece in a larger deal. I will say that I don't think the Mariners are a good fit for all of the reasons that the Orioles and Camden Yards aren't a good fit for Mountcastle, but he can find a home somewhere.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Astros, and they could be an option. I mean, Trey Mancini, that trade worked out for us, so why not give him a short porch to aim for in left field? They have guys like JP France, who I know had a terrible season, but I think it could be a bounce back candidate. Spencer Arrighetti, he's got 5 years of control. Doesn't seem like the value is incredibly high, even if you want to make him part of a Framber Valdez trade. Luis Garcia has 2 years of control left. I know he's coming off of injury, but Christian Javier has 3 years of control left. Jose Urquidy. So I think maybe the Astros could be a team that Mountcastle could end up in.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Walmart Plus. It's Walmart plus free delivery, which saves members time plus money. Yep. Plus an included Paramount Plus subscription to stream movies, shows, sports, and that can't miss documentary. Plus Burger King savings. That's right. Members get 25% off Burger King digital orders every day of the week. Walmart Plus. It's Walmart Plus. Become a member at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. Valid at participating US BKs in the BK app or BK.com for members only. 25% off one time per calendar day. Terms apply. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.
After the end of a good fight, you deserve an ice-cold reward. Medalla, you put in the hours, the energy, the tough labor, because you know the bigger the fight, the better the reward. Medalla, the mark of the fighter. Drink responsibly. Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
But let's go to Bobby Jones' next question, who says, who debuts first in 2025? Samuel Basallo, potential number 1 overall prospect in baseball, or Judd Fabian, the dream 4th outfielder? Zach?
I'll go with Fabian. Just based on age, experience level, he's closer to the majors now than Basallo. And because he's not a catcher, his development curve is a lot shorter. I don't think either is necessarily a slam dunk to debut next year. There could be reasons for either of them to spend all of next season in AAA. And looking at Fabian specifically, if the hit tool doesn't progress the way that I think we're hoping it will, that could be a reason to keep him down there. But on the flip side of that, we know he gives you power from the right side. And as Nico Goodrum was talking about when he was on our show last week, he has good opposite field power from the right side. He's a very good defensive center fielder. He can put together a good at bat, draw walks. So the defense and the power alone might make him a decent 4th or 5th outfielder for the last month of the season. So I give Fabian the edge right now.
Yeah, like I alluded to earlier, Samuel Basallo does not turn 21 years old until next August. So the end of the 2025 season will be approaching, and he still won't be able to go down to Smart Mouth Brewing in Norfolk and have a beer after the game. Not sponsored, but go to Smart Mouth and grab you a beer. Like Fabian's Rule 5 eligible next offseason. So like maybe there's still like that no guarantee that, like Zach said, he needs to be put on the active roster before the season ends. But it is something to consider, maybe. I don't know. I think Fabian, ideally, if you need that 4th outfield type, we've seen this organization go off and get the Aaron Hicks at the trade deadline type player to fill that role. But yeah, between the two, it's Fabian. He's older. He provides. He could fill numerous different roles. He could even just be defense and speed for you on the base paths. Basallo, it's like just sit and let him bake. If I don't see him in the major leagues in 2025, that's okay. As long as he's progressing down in AAA, I don't need him up in the major leagues. I also don't think he's at a point where, certainly not at a point where you think about moving him off the position yet. Like if you're dead set on he's not going to be a catcher, he's first base DH, and he's just knocking the cover off the ball in Norfolk, sure, maybe by the end of the year, give him a shot, see what happens. But I really think you work with him and refine those defensive abilities and bring up a true, well-defined overall just stud of a prospect, even if it's in 2026.
Yeah, I think it's a safe bet that Samuel Basallo will get a major league at bat in 2025. I also think it's a safe bet that it will not be before September. So I think basically, do you think Fabian's going to make the majors in 2025 is the question. And I think probably, yeah. I think probably at some point you'll need a guy, and he's right there at AAA. He's probably going to be close to as ready as he's going to get at some point next year. And if you need someone that can come off the bench with some pop against lefties especially, play great defense, he's a guy that you could easily just bring up, add him to the 40-man. You're going to do it anyway in the offseason. So, yeah, I think it's Fabian for me as well. And here's an age-old question from Randy in the chat that our Discord loves to volley back and forth at least once or twice a month or a week. If you can only keep one in 2025, is it Ramon Arias or Jorge Mateo? Nick?
Oh, man. Credit to Ramon Arias and what he did down the stretch there for this team after everyone, including myself, not everyone, but I was perfectly fine. I'm sure a lot of other people were just dumping him for nothing. If you needed to DFA him. But he really came through and had some big moments for this organization down the stretch. I'm going with Mateo just because he can play second, he can play short, he can play the outfield if you need to. The speed defense, I know the speed defense thing is not solely a reason to keep him around because the speed is useless if you can't get on base. But Jackson Holliday is still not a proven commodity in the major leagues. I think Jorge Mateo would have been pretty helpful on this roster down the stretch as well. So if I have to keep one, I think I'm going with Mateo.
My answer to this question probably changed weekly from June 1st on this season. And I honestly kind of expect that both players are going to be back, but if I can only keep one, I'm going to agree with Nick and go with Mateo. The difference maker for me is the speed and the defense, and the fact that Mateo, up until two of the most freak injuries you can have on a baseball field this season happened to him, was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Hit lefties, play an above average second base, and steal bases. That's all he needed to do, and he was doing an excellent job of it up until the first injury. And then he couldn't get things going again. Then he gets hurt a second time. I think that this year, with a more stable platoon option on the other side of that, in Jackson Holliday, who hopefully emerges as your everyday second baseman by the end of the year, and a healthy season where he doesn't get hit on the backswing of a practice swing by his teammate, Mateo puts together an above average year, an average year, which for a bench guy is fine.
Yeah, I think it's been a combative discussion because it is very close, and it just is a matter of what you prefer. I think Ramon Arias is probably the better player in a vacuum, definitely the better hitter. But I think the defense has slipped a little bit. He can only really play third base and second base. I just think Mateo is a better fit for the 2025 Orioles if you can only keep one. And I don't know if I want a whole nother season with both of them on the Orioles and what that could bring to the discourse. So I think I have to agree, even though I think Ramon Arias is the better player. Maybe this is the time when the trade value is there for him to go, and maybe it's a trade with Mountcastle that we were talking about earlier, or maybe it's just, a move that happens in spring training or something like that.
All right. Two more. This one I threw out in our chat earlier, so we'll ask it on the show. Go back to the prospect ranks. Looking ahead to 2025, what is your early 2025 prospect flag plant? Who is going to emerge? Who is going to be the guy Who's going to have the rebound year? What's a strong take you have right now looking down the farm? Start with Zach.
There are so many different directions I can go in with this question, but I think Frederick Ben-Cosme is going to put together the best season he's had in his career to this point. There were some ups and downs for him at Bowie this year. He got off to a really good start this season, then slumped a little bit over the next few months, and then picked up the pace again as the season wound down. The one thing that I love about Ben-Cosme, there's a lot of things I love about Ben-Cosme, but one of the things I really love about him as a player is that those walk to strikeout numbers have stayed pretty steady throughout his career. So it's just a matter for me of seeing the power start to come around a little bit, and for him to have more success when he puts the ball into play. I think that could be the difference maker, and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he goes back to Bowie to start next season, tears through the Eastern League for the first month of the year, gets promoted to Norfolk, and by August, people are clamoring to see him in the major leagues, even if there's not room for him because he's performing so well. So let's go with the full-on Frederick Ben-Cosme breakout.
I like that. I like that a lot. For me, and I will give a specific name eventually, but I think my bold claim is there will be a pitcher from the Orioles system that breaks out into the top 100 lists. And it's not Povich or McDermott or even Brandon Young. I think it's going to be one of these guys like a Michael Ferret, Keeler Morphe, a Cameron Weston, Edgar Portes, but my guy, I think it's going to be Nestor Urman. I think he's just going to continue. Clearly, the Orioles saw something that no one else knew about in that draft because the Stuff Plus numbers were insane. We've said he was up there with Paul Skeens of the world, or at least close to it, and he showed why that was the case. Yeah, maybe it was not against great competition in college. Maybe nobody saw it. Did it even happen? But the Orioles saw it. They drafted him. He had a lights-out year, as we've talked about a lot on this podcast, and deservedly so. And if he can get to AA, maybe AAA by the end of 2025, and he's still doing the same things, I can't see a scenario where he's not like getting serious attention from top 100 lists.
I love me some Nestor Herman. I thought you were going to go with my guy here for a second. I'm glad you didn't, because I'm going with Cameron Weston. I'm going to take that side of it. I think he earns a 40-man roster spot. Maybe not necessarily during the season, but he's Rule 5 eligible next year. And not to dive into it. Calm down, Vivek. Not to dive into next year before we even talk about this year's. But you got like Trace Bright, Juan Rojas, Fabian Beavers, Basayo. Like, you got a lot of guys. And obviously, those 40-man spots are getting harder to acquire. The crunch is getting more difficult to sit here and figure out who gets protected, who doesn't, because you have this loaded farm system. But I see Cameron Weston, he could just pitch very well next year, and the Orioles say, we've got so many guys, we don't see a clear path. He's Rule 5 eligible. We're going to trade him next deadline, like we saw a lot of Rule 5 guys get dealt this past season. He could be one of those guys next season, but I'm going to go ahead and say early on that he exceeds that, and the Orioles say, we are adding you to the 40-man roster because he pitches so well. And I think a lot of people, not just us, are going to be talking about him for once, and it's actually already started. I don't know if you guys saw this. Dylan White over at Baseball America. I've spent the last couple of days catching up on articles from the last 2 weeks, because the last 2 weeks, I don't know what time is. But Dylan White, he does these RoboScout articles at Baseball America, and they're awesome. And he did, let me pull out a quote here. Cameron Weston was the cover boy for his article, and this was a piece about underrated pitching prospects. And he's looking at specifically instances in which a pitcher's surface stats in 2024 or underlying stuff plus from the model portend potential future success that exceeds the expectations suggested by the industry's perception of the pitcher. And quote, underneath the hood, Weston is a 3-pitch mix from a low release height, fronted by a 91 mile per hour 2-seamer that averages 1.5 feet of arm side run, 80-mile-an-hour slider, changeup, splitter, which have both generated a better than 40% whiff rate each of the last 2 seasons. Although older than, he talks about 2 other prospects from other teams, but although a little bit older, he features less arm speed. Weston has a much higher ground ball rate, reducing his susceptibility to giving up the long ball. His peak projection, 1.28 whip, a 4.10 ERA, is similar to the current publicly facing projection of Brady Singer of the Royals, which is an upper percentile outcome. I'll still take Brady Singer from Cameron Weston, what, an 8th, 9th, 10th round pick out of Michigan that no one talks about. Yeah, that's by flag plant early on.
And we know that changeup / splitter is disgusting, and it's nice to see the numbers back that up.
Yeah,
absolutely, and good to see the recognition for him nationally as well. We'll go to our final question here, which is from KTGTV. He wants to know, who would we want and who do we think will fill the open positions on the Major League coaching staff? And as a reminder, the Orioles have 2 hitting coach spots open, with Ryan Fuller and Matt Borg-Salty departing the organization, as well as bench coach, which was Freddie Gonzalez's old role, and the Major League coach, which is now vacant with the departure of Jose Hernandez. And of course, there could be other changes to the coaching staff coming that we don't know about, but let's look at those 4 for now, starting with Nick.
There are like 500 different options to choose from. Internal options, connections this front office has to coaches over the league, the private facilities this organization loves to dip into and hire from. I don't know. I don't have a lot of specific names. I'm sure you guys probably have some. I know Connor, who asked a question earlier, Locked on Orioles, he had a great episode a couple days ago. Again, it might have been 2 weeks ago by now. I'm not sure. But he ran through a lot of names. I'm just going to throw out a couple that I think I'm going to keep my eye on. I think Cody Ashe takes on a larger role because he very quickly went from new hire in the org to working with the big leaguers. He's also an On the Verge live show attendee in the past, so he gets an A+ in my book. I am curious though, like if you go with Ashe as one hitting coach, do they go with another younger coach in the org to pair with him, or do they bring in a veteran? Same with the bench coach dynamic. I'm sure Brandon Hyde has a notable say in who that is, but in that conversation between Hyde and the front office, is the conversation more about bringing in another veteran like Freddie Gonzalez, which made sense when Hyde was a rookie manager. But regardless of your opinion about Hyde, he's an award-winning manager with multiple playoff appearances now. So would someone less experienced from the minor league ranks in the org, someone who has meaningful relationships with a lot of the younger players like a Buck Britton, be the move as like a grooming role? I don't know which way they're going to go, obviously, but that's obviously a big option. I think Cody Ashe is going to get a big role, though. And I think Sherman Johnson is going to be a name. I'm just looking at internal options. I'm not going into the external options right now. That's too much. I think Sherman Johnson is a name that I'm going to watch pretty closely. He's only 34 years old, so he's younger than I am. Was playing in the Twin system in 2021. Was playing in indie ball in 2022. 2023, he was hired by the Orioles like weeks after he was playing pro ball to be Bowie's hitting coach. And then this season, they promoted him from AA hitting coach to upper level hitting coordinator. He teamed up with Brink Ambler to be the lower level hitting coordinator. I don't know. We've seen like Mitch Plassmeyer took that trajectory to his current role in the major leagues on the pitching side. I think Sherman Johnson probably takes that role, that trajectory as well. And I know we've heard from the players love him when he was in Bowie. So I think that's another fun name to watch this offseason.
Yeah, I was going to cede my time at least from the major league outside the organization time to that excellent work that Connor Newcomb has done for Locked On Orioles the past few weeks, because it's just, I don't know. It's hard enough to keep track of everything going on with the Orioles. I don't know how people can know about all the ins and outs of the coaching staffs of the other major league teams, but for the in-house options, I do agree Cody Ashe is very much in line to get a significant increase in at least like being notable, being the title of hitting coach rather than hitting strategist. I think Anthony Villa is going to be a hitting coach on this team next year. Maybe it's the Cody Ashe role from this past season, but I do think he'll be at least. They love this guy. They love these guys. we saw that years ago when they brought them to the live show, and it just seems like there's no reason not to. They seem like great guys that know what they're doing. So I think Anthony Villa and Cody Ashley will go from the Full Tilt Brewery to the Orioles clubhouse as far as hitting coaches go. I do think Buck Britton probably is going to get the bench coach job. It just makes too much sense. And then you can move Roberto Mercado up to AAA manager. But yeah, I don't really know. That's my hope, is that it's all in-house, because I just like to see that progression and see these guys get that shot, because they're preaching the same choir down in the minors that they're going to preach in the majors. So why not just keep it all in-house? But they know better than me.
That mention of go ahead.
I was going to say real quickly about Anthony Villa. I think that's really interesting, because I don't want to say, like, obviously we don't like know him on a personal level. We don't know the ins and outs of this front office and the coaching stuff, but it felt like a weird move to have him director of player development out, take over the Matt Blood role. It felt weird to me, just because, like, when we talked with him, not on the show, but when we talked to him at Full Tilt, when he came to our live show, like, that guy is passionate about the players in the system, especially the hitters. We're just throwing out names, and he's going off on these guys about the hitting side of things. I just kind of felt it was kind of weird. Like, I feel, again, I don't know him, but I feel like he would thrive and really be successful in some sort of role where he's focused solely on the hitters. I like that call as well.
Yeah, I agree. And Bob, your mention of Full Tilt Brewing is making me really miss Hops the Cat, but that's for a separate podcast another day. But Danielle Allentuck of the Banner had a pretty good piece recently looking at some of the internal options. And we've already mentioned a few of them, but one other name I would bring up that she covered is Mike Montville, the hitting coach at Norfolk this year, who had a pretty good debut season in the Orioles organization. So keep an eye out for him. I agree with you guys. I think that Buck Britton is going to have a role somewhere on this Major League coaching staff, whether it's Hernandez's old role, one of the hitting coach positions, or as bench coach remains to be seen. But right now, I expect him to be on the Major League staff, and I think the hitting coach positions, they will go one external option again. Check out Locked on Orioles for a pretty extensive list of names that the Orioles could consider, and one internal option between Johnson, Villa, and Montville. But there's a lot of good options within this organization. So definitely keep an eye out on some of the player development staff that are already with the Orioles. And with that, that does it for this week's episode. We'll be back later in the week, though, with a look at the American League Rookie of the Year race. Is Colton Cowser the favorite? And if not, who could win the award? We'll look at that later on this week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community. You will have access to patron-exclusive channels within our Discord, as well as bonus episodes throughout the offseason, including our Top 50 Prospects Countdown, which will begin this winter. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
If your day sounds like
we need to report ASAP,
you deserve Modelo. If you've persevered through
2 more reps, 2 more,
you deserve this ice-cold reward. Modelo, the mark of a fighter. Drink responsibly. Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
Walmart Plus. It's Walmart plus free delivery, which saves members time plus money. Yep. Plus an included Paramount Plus subscription to stream movies, shows, sports, and that can't miss documentary. Plus Burger King savings. That's right. Members get 25% off Burger King digital orders every day of the week. Walmart Plus. It's Walmart Plus. Become a member at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. Valid at participating U.S. BKs in the BK app or BK.com for members only. 25% off one time per calendar day. Terms apply. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.
Your dining room is the heart of your home, where meals are shared and memories are made. At Ashley, you'll find affordable dining furniture in a range of classic and modern styles. Ashley's small space sets and extendable tables are designed to fit beautifully into any space. From cozy breakfast nooks and kitchens to formal dining areas fit for a feast. And with mix-and-match seating options, everyone at your table gets the perfect seat. At Ashley, style is served. Shop in-store or online today.
Bingo.
All right, Phil, we're recording now, so it's live. Go ahead. Pick on me the way that you want to.
Did I say that? I wouldn't say that to my son. Man, I mean, come on, man.
Just go. This isn't CBS.
All right, be quiet for a few seconds. Why would people want to listen to the Sims Complete podcast? Well, a couple things. One, if you like to see sons pick on their father, this might be the place. If you want to see a place where the father just kicks the out of his son, this would be the place. What do you like about it, Matt?
Ditto. Father-son dynamic duo talking about the game of football that we love and share and appreciate together. And, you know, hey, it's an extension of what we did, right? Growing up, I was able to watch my father play football, then obviously watch him as a broadcaster. And then he taught me the game of football and share the wisdom that he learned throughout his playing career. And, you know, hey, sometimes we're full of it and sometimes we actually know a thing or two.
Well, we do a lot of research. At least I do. You're a little spotty, but you know, you hang in there. It's fun. I love doing this and it's been awesome.
Sims Complete. Check us out wherever your podcasts are available on the Believe Network. Appreciate it. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.